Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We're really happy to be here and be giving you more information about what's happening at negotiations. We just got off of our contract action team town hall, which was really beneficial to the negotiators. And we're really thankful for all of our members that have signed up for the contract action team. We encourage all of you to also sign up for the contract action team. You are basically going to be, what that job is providing information to our flight attendants so that when it comes time for a vote, that our flight attendants out there, all 25,000, have all the information they need to vote an informed vote. Please, if you feel like that's something that you might be able to help us with, sign up. It's on our apfa.org page, and you can sign up for the contract action team there. We are hopeful that you are finding all the information that we are providing for you for this negotiations beneficial to you. You have the apfa.org website. You also have the hotlines that we provide after our negotiation sessions. And also on Instagram. If you're on Instagram, I hope you've joined our APFA Unity page there. I will say that's been probably one of the fastest growing ways for us to get information out to our members is through Instagram. It is updated not just once a day, multiple times in the day with new information. And so if you are on Instagram, or if you want to get on Instagram, please join our APFA Unity page. We are putting a lot of information out there, a lot of reminders about what's happening here, but it's also a lot of reminders about what's happening in the labor movement that we are a part of. So before we get started today, I want to just remind you about the strategy for this negotiations. The strategy here was targeted negotiations because we had to take almost 2 years off because of COVID, and it has been quite a while since we have seen a raise and improvements to our contract. We decided to target these negotiations and really target flexibility, our work-life balance, and compensation here, and of course, reserve, one of our highest priorities. I want to make sure you all realize that this is not about the 7 of us at a table working and deciding how these negotiations, what we're going to put forward for the proposals. Our board, which is your base presidents, are an integral part of these negotiations. Everything that we are negotiating, they are well aware of. We've had discussions with them. We have definitely had discussions about what to target and what our priorities were. So want to make sure that you realize our entire union is a part of this negotiations, not just the 7 members here. And it's about the 25,000. So remember, we did 4 surveys for this negotiations. They were kind of spread out. There were 3 surveys done before COVID, and then there was another survey done after we got out of the thick of COVID, because I still feel like we're still dealing with COVID in some ways. We also did a reserve roundtable where we met with flight attendants from across the system about reserve. So those surveys, the reserve roundtable, are when we do our terminal walks. We've done those in Dallas, DC, New York, Charlotte, Philadelphia. We've done those so that we can be out talking to the flight attendants and hearing from them directly. And so all of that has really helped to formulate our proposals for this negotiations. So I know we are still getting a lot of, hey, we need this or we need that. But what we need you to understand today is that we are in a critical phase of negotiations. And what that means is that we have passed every section of the contract to the company at this point. They have a proposal for every section that we have. So we have also filed for mediation. We have our mediators and we have dates already scheduled with the mediators. So we are at a critical part here, and this is part of the process that we need to get a final TA to send out to the membership for a vote. So the next 6 months, you are going to see a lot from your negotiating team. We are going to need a lot from all 25,000 of our members in order for us to achieve the contract that we all deserve. I want to remind everybody about why we are being so transparent in this negotiations. I told you already about all of the tools that you have to find out what it is that we are negotiating. There is nothing that we are negotiating for you that you cannot see. Okay, it is on the website. It is in the hotlines. There is nothing we're hiding from you. I want to make sure you know that.
You don't have to log in to view it.
And you don't, thank you, Josh, and you don't need to log into the website to view it, okay? I mean, it's not behind a paywall. There's no secret here. Everybody should know today what we're negotiating for. Why are we doing this? We want to make sure when it comes time for a vote that you are informed and that this vote is on the contract in totality, the entire contract. The way that we have done things in the past has led us to, we have 30 days to go out and inform the membership of all the changes that we have made. It didn't give us a lot of time to help all of the membership understand what has been negotiated for them. That is why we are doing this so different this time. And so we really hope that you will take the time to not only listen to the town halls, but also go into the sections in the on the website that you can find the information about what we're negotiating for. I think really, hopefully, when it comes time for that vote, because there will be possibly another vote before that, but when it comes time for that vote, that you will have all the information you need to make an informed vote. That should help us. Sometimes votes for contracts are based on one issue that people do not like. And really, in reality, we want you to be able to vote on this contract, on the contract in totality. Speaking of votes, there most likely, possibly, could be a vote before the TA. And we want to make sure that you are up to date with your union dues and that your dues current so that your vote counts. So please, if you haven't already made sure, go to your account on the APFA website and make sure that you are dues current so that your vote does count. Another reminder I have for you is it's really important every time you go to work that you wear your APFA union pin above your wings. It's really important to wear your lanyard when you go to work. You will have 2 bag tags coming to you in the mail, probably in the next week or 2. They will be sent out, I believe, at the beginning of April. And please put those on your bags immediately and make sure that you have it on your bag every time you come to work. If you're on the jump seat, you see a flight attendant without a union pin on, and they're like, I don't have one, I don't know where to get one. Your contract action team members at your base have pins, have lanyards. You also have your union reps at your base that have pins and lanyards. Please, it's really important that we wear those at this time. We should be wearing a union pin every time we go to work, always, but really right now, it's really important that the company sees the pins, the lanyards, and the bag tags when they come out. The red lanyards have been approved, and so you will not get in trouble for wearing a red lanyard to work. Okay, just want to make sure everyone was aware of that. All right, today we have a presentation for you. We're going to kind of go over the economics proposal that we passed to the company recently. And we just kind of want to give you a little bit more information above it. We also shared this information with our board at the convention a couple weeks ago. And hopefully we'll give you a little bit more information as to the why behind some of it. And then in this presentation, we will end up answering some of the questions that were sent into us about, especially about compensation. But we also get into hours of service, which has compensation points in it also. So with that said, I know our last town hall we went over by quite a bit. And so let's get started on the presentation because I know we have a lot of questions from you that we want to get to also. So Josh, let's get the presentation up. And here we are right at compensation. And, we've got some questions from you as far as, how did we end up with these numbers, right? I think you can see the percentage on the side. We went for a 35% increase across the board. And I will say we looked at the industry. And right now, if you know what's happening in the industry, United is in negotiations, Southwest is in negotiations. Of course, Delta doesn't negotiate their contract. And so we have where they are being paid today, right? And right now Delta is the highest at 76. A lot of that, as most of you probably know, that's because they are, there's an active campaign to unionize them through AFA. And this is kind of normal standard procedures for Delta when this happens. So we also work with our financial analyst, Dan Akins, and he was a key part of helping us get the whole entire compensation proposal together. Kelly, I know you want to talk a little bit about inflation and this table.
So when we were coming up with these numbers and these percentage increases, we were looking at inflation and what that had looked like at our amenable date, because we haven't had any raises for quite a number of years. So what we did is we actually calculated that inflation, and then we also, once you get up to inflation, did you really even get a raise after that? So we added some more to that, which is where we came up with the 35%, and then also the 6% increases after that to combat core inflation if it comes our way.
Thanks, Kelly. We're going to need all 25,000 members to be engaged, right? To get the compensation to what we deserve, to say the least.
And are owed.
And we are owed, absolutely. All right, let's move on to our next slide. And Wendy, I think you're gonna start here.
Yes, so reserve guarantee, we proposed the 82 hours, but we also proposed no increase to reserve calling out of time. So you would have your guarantee would be 82 hours. Reserve override pay would be $12 for each hour of reserve hours flown, or if you're doing standby. So that's a compensation that will be on top of your hourly wage for all the hours you fly and for any standbys you serve.
Wendy, before you move on, I think I want to talk a little bit about reserve with this slide, okay? Because I'm at the end, kind of changing it up a little bit. It's really important to us. This is one of our highest priorities, is to help our reserves, because we hear that quite a bit. We've heard we need to improve the reserve system, right? We also need to improve the pay for our reserves. We know it's very difficult at 75 hours of pay for our reserves to live in the cities that they're being based in, and to make the rent. So I think what's really important also is we hear from our reserve flight attendants that they do not want our reserve calling out of time increased. And so we know that that's a priority to our flight attendants who are on reserve. So that is something we are definitely, I will say, taking into consideration when we get to this part of the negotiations, right, is we know that they do not want that increased. The closest that anyone has to a reserve override right now in pay is $2 an hour, and that is United. This is significantly more, and there's a reason for that. We want our reserves, when they are on reserve, to not have to pick up so much on their days off. We know it's already difficult as it is. We're making that easier through TTS and UBL, but also they need their days off. So we think the override truly is a good way for us to help our reserves to work on their reserve days, get better pay on their reserve days, and then be able to have those days off. Sorry, Wendy, I just wanted to get that in while we're on that slide. All right.
Okay, and then position premium pay increases, wide body our IPD galley pay, because we know there's a lot more work for those galleys on those trips, to increase it to $3 per hour. If you're working an A321 with 20 first class seats, lead pay would be $425 if you're staffed to FAR minimum. So right now that is basically every aircraft, we are staffed to FAR minimum. And so if we don't see an increase in staffing, then you would get more for working the lead position on that aircraft. We've added the 321 XLR, domestic lead pay of $325, galley pay $1, NIPD $375, purser $575, and IPD galley $3. All other aircraft positions maintained in the JCBA. We've also, in section 14, we did propose if you're working the lead, a purser position, but you are not purser, that you would get the purser pay. That's in section 14, and that's part of that proposal. Holding time, we're increasing from the current $7 an hour to 50% of your pay per hour, pay rate per hour. The time and everything that is currently in the contract would remain the same. It's just an increase in the pay. International NIPD pay, we're seeking to have, if you have a sequence that has any NIPD in it, you would get $3 an hour for the entire sequence and not just for those particular legs. Drug testing, $15 per hour today, and we're looking to do 30 minutes at your rate of pay for each test. So if you get an alcohol test, it's 30 minutes of your pay. If you get both, it's 30 minutes for each test. Foreign language speaker premium pay, increase it to $3.50 per hour. And then one other proposal that we've made in that section is to say if there is a bid position of 2 speakers required on the aircraft and only one ends up working the aircraft, however many, that speaker would get the missing speaker pay. And if there was supposed to be 3 on the bid sheet and then 2 worked it, they would split the pay for that one missing speaker so that you're getting that pay.
Okay, thanks, Wendy, and we're moving on to Susan.
So we've just gone through 2 holidays recently with our new holiday incentive pay. And we did see in actual operations some situations that we had to fight for flight attendants to get that incentive. So we're trying to improve the language to capture those instances. One, first thing we want to do is increase the number of holidays we have from 9 to 13. And the biggest change would be that you would get for any sequence that touches the holiday, it's full sequence pay for the holiday and the incentive. We want to expand coverage for standby where you get the holiday incentive on the standby. And if you got a sequence off standby, you would get the incentive on that trip as well. Also for report no fly, getting the holiday incentive on the call out pay or the rig. And just in reschedules, making sure that if scheduled or in actual operations, you touch the holiday or the incentive day, the pay would be attached. Boarding pay, we're proposing 50% of your rate of pay for each boarding. And say you boarded the plane, it deplaned, you board again, we're proposing boarding pay for each time that you have to board with passengers. Even in a cancellation, if you board and the flight cancels, you would still get the boarding pay. And night pay proposing an additional hour for those late night flights that go between 8:45 and 0:59 in the morning. And black flag pay, similar to red flag, but it would pay 200%. And the difference with black flag, like red flag, and an incentive pay that the company can provide is the black flag would be put on trips or on open time on days when there's a lot of open time and they need to cover that versus the incentive pays every single person on that day who's flying regardless of if it's picked up out of open time or if it's your scheduled trip. So we wanted an additional
Option.
option, yes, there's the word, for flight attendants. And Tim, I'll let you.
Sure, and then also the monthly method of pay, as you know, today, if a weekend or holiday, if the 15th is a weekend or holiday, we're paid the following day, so we be paid on the Monday. The 30th, paid the preceding day. So what we're proposing is that both the 15th and the 30th, if the weekend or holiday that coincides with those dates, you'd be paid the preceding business day, which would put the money in your hands sooner.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Let's move on to expenses. Brian?
That would take us to a per diem. Our proposed per diem right now will be an increase to $3 domestic and $3.50 international. This would put American above every other carrier, including the increases that Delta just recently proposed or actually issued, which started on April 1st. We will exceed that. For crew meals, currently Philadelphia and Charlotte, IPD are the only two bases that, offer crew meals on their flights. This proposal will take us to all bases will be covered on IPD. Crew meals will be provided. They would be provided on duty periods scheduled to exceed 8 hours with no scheduled ground time, greater than 2 hours. The meals would be the same as the pilots. Like I said, it'll cover all IPD sequences. Parking, reimbursement for actual parking expenses up to an amount equal to parking permit expense in the base plus the $75. This would go towards our commuting flight attendants. If you choose to forego the parking within that base, the flight attendant would receive $100 in lieu of parking. This would go to those, or would be able to utilize this for aspects of public transportation or green aspect of that if you wish to do so. We're looking at to make sure it's an added to me too with the pilots to ensure that we have the same, receive nothing less than favorable to what they have currently.
Great, thanks, Brian.
This slide here shows some examples of how that would play out.
Let's just leave it up there for a minute. If anyone wants to take a picture of it. But actually, this will be out on, now that I think about it, you don't have to take a picture of it because we're going to put this out on the website. And so you'll have all the information that we're sharing with you there. So no worries to take any notes today or take any pictures. You'll get all the information. Transparent Thursday. There we go. All right. Okay, moving on. Tim, let's talk about insurance.
Sure. So our healthcare, we have two contractual healthcare plans, the standard and the core plans, which are pretty much the same across all the unionized work groups on the property, which makes breaking away from those plans very difficult, extremely difficult. Therefore, we have proposed limiting the amount that the company can increase our premiums to 6% per year. Right now, the aggregate of the employee contribution could be 21%. That's of all the total cost for the employee. So with that fixed at 21%, we're proposing limiting the amount they can increase the premiums that come out of your check to no more than 6% per year. So if the projected costs of healthcare rise dramatically, anything above 6% would have to be absorbed by the company. So that's a good thing. We also are proposing a new healthcare retirement account, which currently, if you have sick time at retirement, it's paid out at $8.65 an hour. We're proposing that the full rate of pay for your sick hours be put into a healthcare retirement account. This would be a very good thing for our flight attendants. As far as
Let's just make sure everybody understands this though. So that means that if we're getting paid today, we're getting paid $68.25. If this was in the contract today, right, and I had 1,000 hours.
getting $68,250 put into your healthcare retirement account.
Right. So I think, I know I've talked to a lot of flight attendants about this, and they are really hopeful that we get this into our contract. I know we get a lot of questions about, are we negotiating for an early out? And we are not negotiating for an early out, but we are negotiating for this so that when you do retire, you would have an HRA. So I just wanted to make sure they completely understand this, because I know I've heard a lot of good things when I talk to flight attendants about it.
Also, the 401k match, currently we're getting, towards a 401k contribution and match. Currently, we get a total of 5.5%. This is kind of on the lower end of other flight attendants in the industry. For the unions on the property, currently they're getting between 4 and 16% to the 401k, with 16 being the highest. That's the pilot group. We're proposing a 13% contribution and match. 8% would be the company contribution, with 5% being the company match. New hires would be auto enrolled at 5%. That's total 13. And then profit sharing, currently we are in the company's 5% formula where we share the 5% of profits. We are proposing to go to a model similar to Delta. It's also what pilots are asking, which would be 10% of the pre-tax earnings up to 2.5 billion. And then anything over 2.5 billion would be 20%. And I think the TWU already has this in their contract, so great to get this.
Thank you, Tim. All right, we're moving on to Reese, and we're gonna talk about sick first.
All right, so sick, this proposal was actually proposed back last March, so you may have seen it before. We are proposing an increase to your sick leave accrual to 5 hours per month, up from 4.5 today. We did also propose something similar to what used to be sick leave makeup. It's sick leave UBL. Basically, you would pick up the trip through UBL, and then instead of getting paid for the hours in your paycheck, the hours would just go into your sick bank. All of the other premiums, per diem, all the other pay that's associated with the trip would still be paid to you in your paycheck. It would just be the hours of the trip itself that would instead go to your sick bank. And this would only be through UBL, which means it would be restricted by the TTS max. This would, if you are at, it would be 115. So just something else to keep in mind. And then also you would only be able to make up the hours of sick leave that you had accrued up to that point in your career. So if you were 1 year in, you wouldn't be able to accrue, 1,500 hours and just work all your trips as sick leave makeup. You would only be able to accrue up to your 1 year's worth of sick leave. We did also propose rapid reaccrual. This is especially important for flight attendants that go out on medical leaves, IODs, maternity leaves that last 60 days or more and are out of sick time during that. They run out of sick time during that leave. This would enable you, when you return to work, to earn your sick leave at twice the rate. So for the proposal would be 10 hours per month instead of 5, up to the point of the sick leave bank that you had when you went out on your leave. So if you had 100 hours in your sick leave bank, that when you went out on your leave, you were out for 60 days or more, and you used up those 100 hours when you returned, your next 10 months at 10 hours per month would earn you back to that 100 hours. For vacation improvements, again, you may have seen this before. It was proposed about a year ago. We just chose to standardize and increase the chart vacation accrued days. So you can see here, starting at 14 days for years 1 through 4, all the way up to 42 days for year 26 plus. And we did also propose that each vacation day would pay 5 hours per day. You may be familiar that today it's 4 or 3.5, depending on how long the vacation block is. Going forward, it would pay 5 hours per day, regardless of the length of the block or if it was a filler day. So you would no longer have to bid your vacation in 7 hours in order to get that 4 hours per day. You could bid them less than 7 hours, 7 days, and still get 5 hours per day. We did also propose some significant training improvements. Today, you get paid 75 hours per day for any training that you have to do in person. And we propose that this would now be 5 hours of pay no credit. And for the WBTs that you have to do, whether that's CQ related or the quarterly trainings that we've had to do recently, we just proposed to double that rate. So from 25 to 50 and so on.
Okay, thank you, Reese. We're moving on to hours of service. Kelly.
Okay, so let's talk about what we've secured. We're very excited about our VE improvements that we've secured, because one of the not so good things we have currently is for domestic and NIPD, we don't have a backstop. So you're pretty much on duty until the plane actually leaves, or you have to put on Facebook that we're in the airport for 36 hours. So we have the 4-hour backstop on that. And what that means is once you've reached your operational max, you're going to be done at 4 hours, period. And of the 4 hours, we also changed how you get paid. So the first 3 hours of that 4-hour backstop, you would be getting 200% for that duty period, which is what we know today. However, if you exceed that 3 hours going into the 4, we have an increase of 300%. So that whole duty period would then be paid 300%. Huge win there. If you have been keeping up with our proposals on the website, you will have seen that we have also proposed our on-duty max to 14 hours, which is less than what we have today. So if you're looking at this chart, if you look at the highlighted area, that is going to be with the 14 hours that we have proposed. We wanted you to see a side-by-side on that. And that's everything on that slide. Now, this is more of hours of service. It's what we've proposed, and this has been tabled thus far. We're asking for a 5:15 min day, which is a raise from today, which is 5 hours. And we're also asking for a calendar day, not duty period, which is what we currently have. Would you see a disparity in like deep south flying where we're co-paired with the pilots, exact same flight, exact same trip, they get paid more than we do. So this is why we proposed it in this manner. We're also have tabled that we are trying to redefine what a completed trip is to include any return after takeoff. The improvements that we're shooting for the trip rig, 1 for 325, duty rig, 1 for 1.5. For allocations, when they're doing trip construction, we have proposed that they have a max number of flight segments to 4. And as I mentioned earlier with the VE, that our max duty day domestically in actual operations would be 14 hours. We're also asking for 10 hours behind the door for domestic and NIPD. Currently, that is 8. We'd actually like to get some benefit from the new FAA REOF with the 10-hour rest. And then lastly, our crew scheduling errors currently is after origination. So we are proposing that we get crew scheduling errors prior to origination, because shockingly, there are some crew scheduling errors that happen before we even get to work, and we would like to get paid for those.
Oh, gosh, that's an understatement, right? But go ahead.
Yes. So this is a little comparison chart that we did for what we currently have, what we have proposed, as well as some of our competitors like United, Delta, and Southwest. As you can see, we're trying to blaze a path here. And if you look at the very last row, you're going to see a sit rig. We had proposed that. And what that is, in today's world, we see a lot of sit time. So we're trying to create a financial disincentive for them to do that. And how we have done that is if you have sit time between segments in excess of 2 hours, anything in excess of the 2 hours, you get a 1 for 2 rig on.
Thank you, Callie. All right.
Oh, and can I add one thing?
Yes, absolutely.
We do have a carve out on the min day for the 5 hours per duty period for ODM flying. That is a very good type of flying that we have, and our bases really like it. So we did not want to create a financial disincentive for them to build it. So we do have a carve out for that. So it would be paid like it is today.
Thank you. I know we have a lot of flight attendants who love the ODMs, and we have a lot of flight attendants who don't want anything to do with them. But I just was a flight attendant coming home, and he was like, "That's all I fly. That's it." So his young kids works well for him. So, all right. So that's pretty much it for our compensation proposal. But I really want to talk about overall. We've added in some new pay components here: boarding pay, sit time pay, reserve override, night pay. These are all new pay components that we will be adding into our contract. So I know on our earlier call, we had some questions about like, how did we come up? Why didn't we go for more for boarding pay, right? The way that we are approaching this, right, is you have to look at the financial part of it in totality, the entire contract, okay? And we know wages are probably the #1 item that we hear from our flight attendants. We need to see wage increases. We know that. So when we're adding in new items, and then also things like boarding pay, we look at really the value of that and try and determine before we just throw out there something else. We want to make sure that the value of that we have a good handle on, and we want to make sure that what we are proposing fits in with all the other financial components that we're proposing for. So, please stay informed. We have not received a, response from the company yet on this. As soon as we do get a response from them, we will make sure that you have that information. Before we move on to the questions, there's two things I want to address. One is reserve, because in the questions, we are getting quite a few requests for what is it we will be proposing for the system, meaning the reserve rotation system. I can tell you that it is a priority for this team to not only bring the seniority down for reserve, but it is also to improve the reserve system. So at this point, we are still working on those improvements, as we just kind of have talked about. There are certain things that we need to see before we will propose a different rotation. We have told you on previous town halls, we will not be proposing a completely straight reserve system. That is based on the surveys that have been taken here. And by those surveys, we have seen that that would not pass with this membership. And so we've also had a lot of flight attendants request why we're not going for the Delta A days. We have addressed that on previous town halls. And so what you will see when we have done all of the research, when we have all the information we need to put out what rotation system we are going to propose to you, is that it will be a rotation system. Okay. But we are working to make sure we have all the data we need and all the improvements we need before we put that out. I will say, when it comes to making reserve better, right, for our flight attendants, we are working on flex day limitations. Okay, we have made some progress with the company on this, and so we are going to continue to work on that. ASG clicks for all trips flown has already been agreed to, so that is another improvement. Our standby duty day has been improved also. TTS, UBL, and reserves having now the ability to use TTS and UBL for their days off has also already been approved. Okay, and then last series, adding the reserves into that pay protection when they have completed all of their other reserve days and they have called out of time for their last, and now they have trips on their schedule because they have called out of time. We also have made headway on that improvement for our reserves. So as soon as we have more information for you, as far as a proposal for what the rotation system will be, we will get that to you. But it's really important that we make these improvements into our reserve system first, and that we also make sure that what we are going to put out to the membership is something that we have vetted very thoroughly. We do get quite a few different opinions on what the reserve system should be. And I will say 25,000 flight attendants. You know, we have a lot of flight attendants who would like to see straight reserve back. We have a lot of flight attendants who would like us to get rid of the 1 year of straight reserve. We have some flight attendants who want us to stay with what we are at. But I will say we've looked at the surveys that we have taken, and we are using that, but we are also looking at what the improvements are in the reserve system first before we make that proposal. The other issue that I'm going to just address is I'm going to leave some questions about the 40, and our proposal on the 40 is that we can drop down to 30 using TTS, UBL, and ETB. That is the proposal based on the survey that we have taken in the past. And we are definitely still working on that and trying to achieve that. I talked a little bit about this being the critical phase of negotiations. And part of that is we have passed every proposal over to the company already. Now, if we go with a different proposal for something, it's because we are trying to achieve something and we're not making headway here with the company. They're not agreeing to it. So we may tweak a proposal in a different way to try and achieve that. I used aggressive hours in the previous town hall to explain that. That's a good example of it. We were trying to increase the number of aggressive hours that reserve could have on their schedule to 60 rather than 40. We passed that back and forth, at least 3 or 4 proposals. There was no interest from the company. And so we changed our proposal to 40 hours, but it being only aggressive hours awarded, unlike today. So when I say this is where we're at negotiations, you can see on the website everything that we have proposed. And if there are any changes to it, it will be because we're not seeing any movement from the company on agreement with what it is that we've currently proposed. So I hope that gives you an idea, because we were still getting quite a few requests in of like, hey, I think you should negotiate for this, right? And we're kind of past that point right now. All right, let's go to the questions. And let's see here. So I talked about reserve and the hard 40. Those were our first 2 questions. Let's go to our question from Brian. It says, I didn't see an exemption for the jump seat restriction on your negotiations update. As you know, United and Delta have this exemption, and I think it's very important that we negotiate this issue as well. Brian, do you want to answer that one?
Sure. Actually, we have proposed that. It's in the general section of the contract. And we have proposed to the company to eliminate the weight restrictions that are currently in place for that. The company has not agreed to that at this point, but it is an item that we are holding firm on.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, next question. I think I kind of touched on this earlier, but we'll ask it. Are early out incentives being considered for those topped out? In the past, incentives have been offered if you met certain criteria such as minimum age or seniority. Many in their late 50s and older would probably leave with an incentive or with continued insurance coverage with the same contribution. Kelly, you want to take that one on?
Yeah, I sure will. So if you retire out under the current 65-point plan that American offers, you would be eligible for the HRHA sick bank conversion that we had mentioned earlier. That was a very popular piece to the VOPs when those were offered in COVID, and we wanted to make sure that we captured them in this contract because everybody needs a bridge.
Thank you, Kelly. All right. Next question. Is there any attempt or any progress being made towards having foreign language speakers paid speaker pay for the entirety of the sequence? For Spanish speakers especially, there are a lot of sequences where it's pretty much a domestic trip. Then somewhere on one day of the trip, you have a short term that requires a speaker. This results in being paid a mere $4 extra for a 3-day trip that cannot be traded or dropped most of the time. Thank you so much for this question. Brian, you want to start that, and I'll add in a little.
Sure. We have proposed language to the company on that. And we are working towards that. I mean, right now, we're still in negotiations on it. And as Julie is going to address shortly, we will be looking at opening section 15 for further discussion.
Well, I would say this was a topic at the convention. The base presidents, one base president brought this forward. Definitely had other base presidents weigh in on this topic because especially we know for our Spanish speakers, this is a huge issue in probably 3 or 4 of our bases. And so we have attempted to try and get the company to make sure that there are trips that require a foreign language speaker on every day of that trip. They have not agreed to that. We've gone back and forth with that. We are looking at alternatives because we know this is an issue for you and that we really hear you. So do your base presidents. So I want you to know that we're going to continue to work on this issue. Okay. All right. Currently, if a flight attendant is on unpaid medical leave, after 12 months, the company stops paying their portion of our medical insurance. And we switch to COBRA, which is considerably much more expensive. I agree, it's ridiculous, right? I saw in a previous APFA negotiations wish list that APFA was asking for 36 months on unpaid medical leave before COBRA comes into play. Where are we at on this issue? Kelly, want to take that one on?
Yeah, and Reese hit upon it just spot on earlier that we are holding on the 36 months that you would be eligible for active employee rates while unpaid. That's something that pilots currently have, so it's not a foreign concept to the company. I'm gonna bootstrap something on this, if you
Sure.
don't mind, because another thing that we're asking for, is no auto designation of FMLA, which to me does kind of work hand in hand.
Yes.
And that's gonna be a huge boon, so which is why we're holding on that.
Yes, absolutely. Top of a priority list,
Very
right?
much so.
All right. Is there anything being included in the negotiations to address co-terminals and the reserve system? It would be a benefit for the company and for us to have some sort of preference system to prioritize flying out of a co-terminal we may happen to live closer to. When do you want to take this one on?
Sure. So previously with LAA, yes, we did have preferencing, and for the most part, the only thing that really worked was co-terminal. But today we have Rota and Rota D where you can bid for a specific trip. So if you're wanting to fly out of that co-terminal, that's your preference. Absolutely, you could bid for a trip either specifically or generically. So today we don't, because we can do that, we don't really need preferencing. And we were not proposing that in negotiation because of that.
Thank you, Wendy. All right, next question. What is your plan when it comes to bid denials? Whether purser or speaker before PBS, they were assigned in reverse seniority. However, PBS cannot work in reverse seniority. Do you consider the current situation a violation of seniority? Okay, so I'll talk a little bit about this. Maybe Tim will help me out a little. Part of the issue, especially with purser that we see, is we have a lot of pursers in the base that don't bid for purser. There is contractual language that everyone who is purser qualified is to bid for 150 hours a year of purser. This isn't something that has been administered by this company, and they are in the current process of figuring this out and starting to look at the hours. And you will have more information before that happens. I don't want to scare all the pursers here. But the company and the union will come out and say basically what they will be doing in order to track the number of hours that are being bid for purser. Do you want to add anything to
Why,
that?
just why this is important is if people hold the qualification that they're not bidding for purser, it has a ripple effect. There's one thing, there's people below you that want to fly those trips, right? And if it can also force involuntary, awards of trips.
Yeah.
So we're seeing purser denials in some bases, especially when, let's say, the A321T, for example, because of the increased workload, a lot of people they don't want to fly it, so they're not bidding it. Well, that forces the junior people to have to fly those trips, when really there's a bidding requirement for everyone. So it is going to be coming. So
Yes, it will be. So as far as speaker and purser, I'm trying to think of a really quick way to explain how the system works in PBS. Because the way that it currently works is that when PBS looks at the bids, right, it's going to look at everybody's layer one, and it determines from there where the bid denial would have to start. I know for speakers, if let's just say that you were bid denied for speaker and there were two speakers at the bottom of the seniority list who did not get speaker trips, then you would put in for a miss award for that, and the top two speakers would be miss awarded. So I'm not going to get into a whole lot of that. I hope that we can address this with you in a phone call because I want to make sure you understand exactly how it works. And if it's not working in your base, we need to really look at that. But I know from my time spent working on this, we did get miss awards for flight attendants when it didn't work properly. So we'll try and follow up with you if we can. All right. Let's see. Okay, I'm trying to read it, see what this flight attendant is trying to say for a second. Okay. I think this flight attendant is trying to ask, how close are we to having a settled contract? How's that? Susan, I see your name on here, so I'll let you go ahead and answer it, okay?
very hard to project, but know that this team is very cognizant of the fact that we're in year 4 now and we've lost some time in COVID. The good news is that we have a mediator assigned, and you all know we requested mediation. We have those dates with the mediators starting in June. So, and we have every section of the contract open now. So we're hoping, sooner than later, but I think projecting a date is a little early for that.
We're in the critical phase. We're moving along in the process. Like I said, with the mediators already on board, we have 15 dates scheduled with mediators. So this process is moving along. We are, you know, I think the other part of it is every single section of the contract has been passed over to the company. So we hope that we will see an end in sight this year. All right. Let me see. We already talked about compensation. Okay. Cartel activity. I think we answered this. We talk about this on every single town hall, right? My specific question is, will there be anything in our next contract to prevent the current rampant practice of more senior flight attendants bidding prime trips and then selling these prime trips or gifting them to more junior friends? Brian, you want to take that on?
Sure. Proposals have been made on both sides of the aisle for that. Both sides are actively working towards a resolution to this. This is something that's important to our members, and it also it's becoming an important factor to the company. More information from our proposals are online, so you can see what we proposed in regards to this subject. But this is an item that is in current discussion with the company as we move forward in these discussions. As Julie noted, you know, there are items that were tabled that we're going back to the table with to have discussion on. This will be one of them, and we're trying to work our way through those.
And just to add to that, our challenge too is how do you limit cartel activity without limiting flexibility for those using the systems as intended. So it's a big discussion, but we want to make sure that we're not limiting all flight attendants' flexibility as well. So,
Which makes it very
Nice.
difficult, right?
Yeah.
25,000, we start to touch one thing, and then we hear from another group of people like, don't do that, you know? So it makes it very difficult. All right, let's see. 401k match that is being proposed with a 2-year contract, what will it revert back to after the 2 years? Or would it stay the same until something else was negotiated? Wendy, you want to take that one on?
Sure. So this is actually at the current time a proposal of a 3-year contract, and anything agreed to in the contract, once that contract becomes amendable, basically ends, it would continue on. So this would not be like it was for the JCBA, where LAA flight attendants had the 9.9, the 6.75, and so forth. That was set in the JCBA with an expiration date. So we're not proposing an expiration date. It would just continue on as is, whatever that proposal ends up being, and with no expiration.
And that was actually, that in the JCBA was negotiated in CLA. Okay, so that carried over into the contract because in the CLA it had a date on it, right? And so that had to be brought in. Thanks, Wendy, for that. Okay. All right. Okay, I love this one. Great question. Is a priority of negotiations to get rid of all the gray areas of the contract where everything is at the discretion of scheduling or given availability of reserves? Okay, I would say in some areas we are working on clarification, but basically this is a lot of process also. And I'm just going to give you a quick example. We're adding process into the contract when it comes to the miss award process through TTS, UBL. It's a lot of information, okay? But it's now going to be in there so you know exactly what it is that you have to do in order to get pay protected if you have a miss award, right? In some areas, like such as, let's say PBS miss awards, it's not so clearly defined. Now, we've clearly defined the process outside of negotiations, right? But so the whole contract isn't going to have the process for every single thing in the contract. I think where you say at the discretion of scheduling, we do have a crew schedule consent in certain areas, right? I can think of a few.
Release.
Or reserve, right, right. So with crew schedule consent is different. It really, that is dependent upon coverage when it says with crew schedule consent. So it is different. It's not necessarily gray. It's just if coverage is good, then they can go ahead and let you deadhead if you're a reserve, you know, to your commuters. So. All right,
We did secure one good,
go ahead, Reese.
we did secure one way to get rid of at the discretion of crew scheduling that I'm really proud of. Which is, if you're flown into your flex day or golden day in actual operations and you want the day replaced somewhere else in your reserve month, today, it has to be mutually agreed upon with crew scheduling. And if you don't come to an agreement, then you just get paid the value of the day above your guarantee. But going forward, this was agreed to, right? Believe so, right? Okay. Like, this is a dream. Is that you'll still have the option to suggest different days that you want, and they will still have to agree to the suggested days. But if you don't come to an agreement, instead of just losing that day off and getting paid the credit, you'll get the day placed on the other side of the block of days off. So if you had your days off Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, you got flown into the Monday, you can't get it placed on Saturday, they'll now give it to you on Thursday, which is that other side of the block of days off.
Perfect example. I'm really happy that we were able to achieve that
Yeah.
because we have argued with the company on that for years. So it just seems like it's.
Days off are important,
It's
especially when you're on reserve. So, you know, with the, nature of our industry, we can't always control what happens with weather or schedules. So but your days off are important and they should be protected to the best of our ability.
Great example. All right, next question is about staffing. And Kelly, this looks like it's going to be you and I. So first, the flight attendant is asking, why is the staffing grievance not moving forward? Okay, we do not have a date with an arbitrator yet for the staffing grievance. That is one of the reasons. And we are working on that. We should hope that that will happen very soon, such as this month. Staffing is a priority to us here. That is definitely what happened in COVID with them cutting the staffing due to the number of passengers being cut, the service being cut, and then never bringing it back. I will say for us, this is one of our top priorities is staffing. So it's not just going to go away with this contract. This grievance isn't just going to go away. We realize this is a priority to many of our flight attendants, probably all 25,000. Kelly, do you want to add on? It says, can the 777, 787, and 321T, can we talk about variable manning for those?
If we must. Variable manning is old world stuff. And we have made a staffing proposal to the company, and it is to get pre-COVID staffing back. We're not really wanting to pivot into a variable manning situation because that was such a nightmare as a rep to try to administrate. Because it's like I gotta pull the flight, see how many passengers we had, chase down direct deny. So we don't want to do that. We just want to give me a chart. This is where I'm going. This is the type of service. This is the aircraft. These are the numbers. And if they're not met, if I have less crew than I have bid positions, then understaffing pay kicks in.
Perfect. Thank you, Kelly. All right. Has the math been done to see if a substantial pay raise would outweigh boarding pay, which most likely would be offered at a reduced hourly rate? If so, how much of an hourly pay increase would benefit the membership more than the boarding pay? Reese, you want to take that one on?
Sure. So, as you witnessed in our compensation proposal, we proposed a 35% pay increase. This is a significant pay increase. It puts us ahead of all other airlines in the industry. And we also proposed boarding pay that is similar to Delta's boarding pay, but does have some improvements. Like you get paid for every boarding that you do. And so we're not, our intention with our economics proposal is to reward the hustle. Having an increase in one area does not mean you'll have a decrease in another area. We want all areas to pay well, and ultimately flight attendants that are showing up to work, that are here, that are hustling, should be getting paid more. So that's why you saw it in Kelly's presentation. We're proposing improvements to our sequence construction rigs and proposing things like boarding pay, sit time rig, so that when you're here and you're working, you are getting paid well, versus if you're on vacation or something like that. You'll still get your high pay rate for your vacation hours. It just won't pay those little extra things that you get for actually being here. Thanks, Reese.
And can I just add,
Sure.
I hear from so many flight attendants, and we all know as working flight attendants, how the boarding time is a very stressful time, right? One of the most for us. And I think flight attendants want to see the compensation for that, right? Because you're responsible for safety, you're responsible for medical, and should be compensated for that time.
Thank you. Agreed. Okay, is APFA negotiating for a minimum of 515 hours per day as the pilots? Yes, we've already answered that, right? I'm trying to see if there's something in here that we haven't answered. We've pretty much covered that in our compensation. Are you seeing anything in Tim that we haven't?
Binder. What changing duty rates can look like. When you change a duty rate, right? The company isn't going to just, let's say a 3-day trip, a slash trip, a 1-1 San Francisco Transcon that's now paying 12.5 hours. It covers 3 days, right? But it's 2 duty periods. So in a new world where it's a 515 calendar day average, that would pay $15.45. The company isn't going to leave every trip the same, right? Everything's not going to stay the same. The company's going to try to burn off that extra time where they can, right? On IPD, of course, it's a no-brainer. Those 4-day trips are paying 21 hours for the pilots. So down in Miami, sometimes we're getting 16.5, 17. They can't really do a whole lot to add any flying to an IPD sequence. So they could do anything there. But in some of the other flying throughout the system, they very well could and may. The pilots did see some of that. So we have to be cognizant of that when we're talking about this. That's why we carved out the ODANs, for example. But the company isn't going to pay 10 hours and 30 minutes for an ODAN that is 4 or 5 hours flying, which is they're just not. They would split that up into 2 different multi-day sequences, for instance. So it's just something to keep the back of your mind.
Okay. Thanks, Tim. Going through, because I see there's these reserve questions. Let's go down to this one. Please give us an idea what reserve will look like with the new contract. Okay, we've already kind of talked about some of the new things that not only have we proposed, but that we've been able to secure, okay? Give the reason why APFA thinks it will lower reserve numbers, and please don't hold on any more of APFA's stance on length of reserves served. Will there be an increase of straight reserve? Okay, so I did kind of already cover this earlier as far as why we haven't put out what a reserve rotation would, that we'll be proposing would look like, because we are still working on the improvements, and we are still actually researching and gaining data for what a new reserve system would look like if we would have put it in 2022, right? So, Reese, do you have anything to add to that?
Just that, the question asks, how to lower reserve numbers. And the main way to lower reserve numbers is for the company to start paying the guaranteed out. So if reserves in a base are only flying 30, 40 hours, and they're paying 30, 40 hours of guarantee to each of these reserves, they're going to lower the number so that the next month, instead of 2 reserves being needed to get to that 70 hours, they only need the 1 reserve. At the moment, the company's really proud of the fact that they're not paying out a lot of guarantee. They're using reserves to at least 75 hours, so they're getting the full use out of a reserve. So keeping that in mind, a lot of what we've proposed in scheduling and in the reserve sections is to decrease the use of reserves. So things like out of base pickup, UBL pickup for flight attendants, or reserves being able to use TTS and UBL on their days off. Last minute call out for line holders so that there's an option for someone else to get a trip before a standby. Today, we don't have that option. Reorganizing Rota D so reserves can be awarded into days off before other reserves are assigned. All of this increases the pool of flight attendants that can be on those trips, whereas today, those trips are just awarded or assigned to reserves on reserve days. So all of our focus is to try to increase the pool so that going forward, if some of these things could come into play, reserves will only be flown, they'll be flown less during their reserve month. And then the next month, the company will realize, okay, historically, we didn't need this many reserves, let's lower the numbers. And that's the plan. That's the strategy.
Thank you. I'm really glad that I said, hey, Reese, help me out with that. That's perfect. There is a lot that we're still working on in that section that we need to secure first, right? Before we can get to the next phase. So thank you. All right, lots of reserve. I think we've covered a lot on reserve and why we're where we're at in the process with that. Okay, here's a question. Why has APFA left out retroactive pay from these negotiations? Kelly, want to answer that?
Actually, if you visit our website, look at the negotiation status page, we do have a placeholder for some additional compensations, such as a retro crate scheme or a COLA scheme. It's kind of where we haven't put language to it because we kind of have to see where we're going to get it. Because at the end of the day, we're looking at a totality of some good compensation.
Thank you. Thanks, Kelly. All right, I'm going to read this one. This is actually just to kind of give all of you an idea of what the negotiating team, plus your base president, plus everybody who's working on this, the information that comes into us from flight attendants. This flight attendant says this rolling reserve system, I think they mean rotation reserve system, is so unfair to those who have been flying for decades and who have created a life not tethered to an airport, finding themselves on reserve creates such unspeakable stress. Can we expect any changes to this unfair policy? So we've already talked a lot about reserve, but this is just kind of gives you an idea. We've got people on every end of the spectrum here as far as what they think about the reserve rotation system, right? And that's why we know this is a really important topic to everyone. I will say we talk to our new hires every week, right? We have 2 classes every week. We show them the seniority across the system of reserve. I think when our new hires are hired, when they're interviewed and hired, nobody tells them that they might possibly be on reserve for 30 years. We show them what the reserve seniority is here across the system for the last, is it a year and a half? We have documented for them. They're all pretty surprised. I think they're happy that there is a rotation system, but they're learning what reserve is as we talk to them. But they also, I don't think anyone's ever told them really the truth about what the seniority is here on reserve. So just wanted to add that in. We have a lot that we have to make sure we listen to first, and that we have to deal with as far as coming up with this reserve system. See here. Okay, we're going to take a couple more. I know we've got a lot of questions. So, actually, we are very close to the end here. Okay, that's rotating reserve again. Let's see. Sorry. Okay, it looks like Kelly's going to help me out with this. Regarding the proposal for 27J, would the amended language cover lost pay vacation seniority for the duration of the IOD? If so, will this be for future IODs, or will flight attendants who have lost pay and vacation be made whole at the date of signing?
Okay, so that raises a really good question, and I think even more so outside of IMD. So once we have a signed contract, that is going to grab anything at that date and moving forward. So it's not going to go and look retroactively at that type of thing. So what we are looking at that is, we have kind of what we have our status quo now. So if you are on salary continuance or outside of salary continuance, if you're on a paid status, then you would keep accruing your longevity. You will always, 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 not always, right? You will always maintain your bidding seniority. But as far as your longevity, which is your pay steps and your vacation, that's going to be tied to when you are on a paid status. So one of the things that we are kind of tweaking in IOD is currently your salary continuance is 6 months. So if you go out halfway through the month, they're counting that as a full month. If you're coming back from your IOD halfway through the month, they're counting that as a full month for salary continuance. What we have proposed is the number of days. So that way you're not losing that value.
Thanks, Kelly. Okay, I think we have time for one more question. And this is from one of our speaker flight attendants. We have 5,000 speakers system-wide. Last contract vote, we had only 7,000 people vote. Only speakers can vote no on this contract and can delay it even more because this large work group has not been taken into consideration. Okay, I think this is really talking about the one speaker per cabin. That is now one speaker, or not one speaker per flight. We haven't changed the number of speakers on any trip, right? That still remains the same. It looks like Susan, you want to take this one on and talk about speakers, and I may add in.
I think you just said it, but I was saying.
Oh, okay. Well, I think, you know, the number of speakers we have is definitely significant. We have about 3,700 speakers. We have definitely heard you. We have committed to return to going back and revisiting our section 15 part of the contract, which is our speaker portion of the contract. And we are going to look at it because since we agreed to that tentative agreement, it's changed. The number of cabins per aircraft has changed, right? We know in 2024, we're going to go to a 2-class system, 2-cabin system on all of our aircraft. And so we are going to revisit that portion of the contract. As soon as we get back to that, we will let all of you know that we are revisiting and that we are looking at what we've negotiated. So right now, our focus is still reserve and scheduling. And we've started to open up some of the sections that we have tabled, and we're looking at those again, and then we will get back into section 15, probably in the next couple of months. So I do see the reminder of that on the contract action town hall also, and just want to make sure you're aware that we will let everyone know when we get to that section. So I think that's going to be it for right now. I know we didn't read every question specifically. We tried to address, we have quite a few in here about reserve, which doesn't surprise us. This is a priority for this negotiating team, is to make improvements to the reserve system. I read some of those earlier to you. We are going to continue to work on reserve improvements first, and then we will get to what the reserve, what rotation we will be proposing after we secure some of those improvements. So we want to thank you today for your time. I know we've gone over. Kelly, yes? What's that? Oh, yes. I got it right here. I got it right here. We want to thank you for your time. We want to remind you about the picket on April 4th. It's really important if you are off that day, and if you want to bring friends, if you want to bring family, your kids, you know, please show up to the picket. Show American Airlines management how important it is that we get a contract that we all deserve. You've seen all of the proposals now. We've hopefully given you a little bit more information. And more important than anything, please stay informed. It's really important. That's why we're doing this, is to give you as much information as we possibly can, so that when it comes time for a vote, you feel like you know exactly what this negotiating team has negotiated for you, and that your vote is on the contract in total. The total contract you're voting on, not just one issue. So we want to thank you again for your time today. We appreciate it. We will be doing another town hall. I already mentioned dues. Thank you. Tim, now I got the note. Anything else I missed? Let me stop myself. Anything else? I did mention dues please get dues current, so your vote counts. Because we probably will have another vote, happening before the TA, and we want to make sure that everyone's vote counts. Okay, anything else? All right, thank you again, and please fly safely.
Thank you.